Hey guys, it's Jim. Thanks for tuning in and coming back. I appreciate it. Hope you're doing well wherever you may be. I've got a video today about Aurora HDR. A lot of you guys have been picking this product up because it's been on a special through July 4th, which is now over, and hopefully you've got it and you're working through it and having a lot of fun. If you haven't used my playlist, I'll put a link in the corner, but I've got 20-something videos about Aurora HDR 2018, and this will be another one. In this video, I'm going to dive into this photo, so let's go ahead and get into it. This is something I took in Ireland, in Dublin, a number of years ago. It's at the Guinness factory, which is quite fun, actually. It's 3 exposures. Now, I brought them into Aurora HDR, and here's the base blended HDR exposure. So let me show you. There's the middle exposure of the bracket set, and that's the HDR base. So what I like about Aurora is that it's really natural looking to me. That's pretty much what the scene looks like. Now, I tend to add it a little bit for drama or interest or color shift or something like that. And so while many people might just put this in there and say, look at that, it just looks like the place. And there's nothing wrong with that. I like to get creative is the best way of putting it. Now, this was years ago, actually. This photo is a number of years old, and it actually came up recently because somebody was asking me about it. And I got it out and started looking at it, and one of the things I wanted to point out is if you look up here at the, and I don't know if you can see this, but it's 3 exposure. Back then I used to shoot 7, and I shot 7 exposures, 1 stop apart. And this was an old Nikon full frame camera. I don't do that anymore. Now I shoot 3 exposures, 2 stops apart. But of the 7 exposures that were 1 stop apart that I shot this day, I'm only taking 3 of them to make the photo. And that's because I don't really need any more than that. There's plenty of light. And the really dark and the really bright ones are just kind of trash anyway. So I basically just took the stuff in the middle. These days I would shoot this, and as you can see, these are kind of the darker exposures because once I get into the brighter stuff, as I said, it's not useful. And I would probably shoot this scene like -5, -3, -1, or -4, -2, 0 today. And that's simply because I tend to err on the side of shooting a little bit darker or exposing to the left. ISO 200, what does it say? 18 millimeters and f13 in case you're curious. Okay, so first thing I did is I went into the basic panel, and let me turn that on. And you can see immediately I made a big impact on the photo. A lot of that was the color temperature shift, and that's simply because to me, that was a little too much of the orangey kind of earth tone, and I wanted to cool it off and make it a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, dramatic, I guess. I'm not sure. Added contrast. I bumped up HDR Enhance and took down the highlights. So that was that filter. And then I went into color and I gave that a bump. I gave it some vibrance and some color contrast. So doing that, if you look at it, that starts to bring back, the color contrast is important here because it starts to help you see the difference between the oranges and the blues. And I like that. I like to have contrasting colors in my photos if I can achieve that. And then went into structure and just bumped that up a little bit. Now, that impacted the entire photo, so I'm going to go in the next layer and do some denoise because the sky's getting a little grainy, which I don't want. I like smooth skies. And you can also see there's some dust spots that were on my lens. And, you know, shame on me, but hey, it wasn't clean. Let me go to the next layer, and I'm going to turn that on. And all I have here is denoise, and I moved it up pretty high to 93. And so that smoothed out the entire photo, and then I just went in and created a brush mask in the sky. So that's what I did. I just painted in that denoise adjustment, and so far I'm really liking the photo. I like what I have. Now I'm not finished with it, but it's much different to me visually than that. That's the base, no, that's not the base HDR. That's the center exposure from those 3 exposures, and that's where I currently am. So I got a bit more sort of detail being amplified, and I got more color pop, which I like. But I'm not done, so I want to go add another layer. And this time around, I went to Image Radiance, and I just gave that a little bump there. You can see it creates a little bit of shadow. One of the things I like is that the black of the door, or the gate, I guess, that says Guinness on it, the Guinness color is really black in their logo and all that. So you know, it was pretty black there, and I want to keep that. And it also adds some nice contrast, I think. So I also bumped up the vividness and the warmth. So I brought back some of the warmer tones that I'd kind of cooled off earlier. And that's something I'm always doing. It's kind of an interplay between warm and cool just until I get it looking the way I want it to look, which is just, you know, whatever I'm feeling like at the moment, I guess. Color toning is next, and that all I did here is just go into the highlights, and I left the hue at 0, which is kind of in the red, and then I bumped up the saturation to 21. So let me show you the before, a bit cooler, and the after, a little bit warmer around the highlights, which is in the center of the frame, but also it picks up those cobblestones. So to me, let me show you one more time. To me, the cobblestones are a little cooler, and the sky's cool, and you're kind of drawn that way because that yellow line there and the white line and the train tracks, and obviously you're led into the gate, and that's kind of the point. I'm trying to drive you visually into the photo. So bringing up those highlights sort of warms up that section of the photo, the center, and that's where a lot of the highlights are. And then I just went into vignette, and this is where I wanted to create a little bit more mood, and that was just I added a vignette kind of heavily, and then I also added some inner brightness. And that was simply because I like that a lot about the vignette filter is if I can show you now with the vignette off and now back on, it actually looks like the center of the photo is much darker originally, right? Seems kind of dark, and now that I've brightened it, it seems more natural that it would be bright. So that's kind of how I would do that. And at this point, I'm really done with the photo, except, you know, you've got these spots here. Okay, so now what I want to do is get rid of those spots, and as you probably know, there's not a spot removal tool in Aurora. Now there is in Luminar, but there's also Snap Heal, and in this case, I'm going to go ahead and go over to Snap Heal. So you just go to Plugins. You can choose Luminar if you want to, or I'm going to choose Snap Heal, and that's one of the nice things about if you're using Aurora as a standalone, you have the ability to go to these other plugins. I'll often start in Lightroom, and I might you know, jump over to Aurora and then maybe come back, and then I can do the spot removal on the blended HDR in Lightroom, or maybe go to Luminar as well, or later, or whatever, and do the removal there. But in this case, I wanted to show you Snap Heal. It's an older product by Skyloom, and all you do is you just click on the spots you want to remove, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get them all, if I'm even seeing them all properly, but you just choose what you want to do, and then you hit erase. And it'll give you this little bit of information here, kind of some quotes and some facts, and, you know, whatever it is, kind of interesting stuff. It helps you sort of, you know, spend your time reading something that could potentially be of interest while you're waiting on the erase to occur. So here we go. I think my sky looks great, and that's one of the things I like about Snap Heal. It just works so clean and so well. And I'm just going to hit apply, and it's going to say, okay, well, I'm going to go back to where I came from, which is Aurora. And so here's the Snap Heal layer, and for some reason it calls it layer twice, but that's the Snap Heal layer, so it just sits on top of the layers that you already had. Now, since it's a layer, you can turn it off, and when I do, you'll see the spots come back, and when I turn it back on, you'll see the spots go away. If for some reason you said, gosh, I don't really like this, you could just hit the erase key, or excuse me, the minus, and that'll delete the layer that you have highlighted. So be sure you're not down here or down here, because then you would end up erasing those layers. So just to be aware of that. Now I'm done with the photo. That's really it. And the other thing I wanted to do is I actually edited this photo years ago, and I thought that was kind of interesting. Let me open that. And that's where I was years ago as an HDR photo, and that's where I am now. So let me do that one more time. There's the before, and that's really HDR. You can see I got rid of all the contrast. I was exposing everything and making everything bright and visible, and that's the way I used to do HDR. And when you first start, especially, that's like one of the great things about it. You're like, wow, I'm getting visibility across the entire scene. And so I kind of went a little crazy, and it's kind of almost cartoonish, and now it's a very different interpretation of the scene. And you know, you may like the other one better. It's okay. You know, I like them both, actually. I don't actually dislike this a whole lot, but I think it's lacking in contrast, and I don't think there's enough color contrast either. So, and it's too bright. But you know, it's not bad. I don't like that the door, I exposed too much of that door, when in reality the door's kind of black, and I like that it looks more solid, and it actually more fitting, I think, to who Guinness is. So one more time, there's the I don't know, this is 5 or 6 years ago kind of HDR, and the current state. Anyway, this isn't really about comparing my old work to my new work. I just found it interesting and thought you might find it interesting too. So I hope that helps, and if you've got any questions, feel free to leave them below. Hit like, hit subscribe, and share this with your friends if you would. I got a lot more videos. I got more stuff about Aurora. I got more stuff about Luminar, and I have more stuff about other products. I've even got another vlog I'm working on. It just takes a while to edit because it's so many video clips, and it's sticking them all together. Whew, takes a while, but it's fun, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for coming by, my friends. You guys have a great day, and take care. Adios.